Hey team, in this video we're going to give you shelter setups that you can use with a 10x10 tarp the next time that you're moving out. These will range from easy to a little bit more complicated, and I'm going to save my final and best two for last. Right, you're going to see a couple different types of ridge lines, so we're going to review those first. One of them is the jungle loop. And to do that, you're just going to take your paracord. For about a 30 feet run, you're going to want to double it, so you need around 60 feet. Take your paracord and run it until you have a bite right in the middle, and then you just start making overhand knots. About every 4 to 5 inches is more than sufficient. And that's all she wrote. And then what happens is when you bring this around a tree, you're going to take that one of those knots and you're just going to place it in between. The tension that it has on it, the more that this is going to bite down on top of this paracord, and that knot is going to keep it secured. And that jungle loop is the fastest deploying ridgeline system in the world. My other main ridgeline uses paracord as well, and this particular one is has some additional strands in it. It has some fire cordage as well as some fishing lines, so it's nice and pliable. My last one was stolen in the smash and grab, so we're going to get this dude set up. Links will be down in the description below. So we're going to take this, I want about 30 feet, and when I say 30 feet, I guess what I mean is 30-ish. And then on one end, I'm going to have an end of the line bowline. And then from there is when I wrap this one around, I'll just use a peg to keep it nice and secured. Right, and then you also see some bank line that I'll use to help draw some tension up. I'll use a prusik. Typically, I'll use either a double or in this case, a triple. And as you can see, it keeps it extremely secure. I get it all coiled up and she's ready to go. In addition to this line, I'll also carry 4 10-foot sections of paracord, also pre-staged with an end-of-the-line bowline. That way I have all kinds of opportunities. And most of the time I'll also have some bank line on me as well. There are as many tarp configurations as you can imagine. But when you need to set one up quickly, the easiest to deploy is a simple lean-to. Simply secure a ridgeline between 2 trees and use a pair of stakes, and man, she's done. Always keep the wind to the backs of your shelters. But the lean-to doesn't offer the best use of space when you're inside. So by taking a short piece of cordage from the center of the tarp, you can draw out a little more headroom. And if you add in a small stick, you can change the direction of the draw to add even more room when you're inside. Now you can modify it further to protect you from the rain by using the first pull-out from the end to connect to the ridgeline. You'll need a couple extra pieces of cordage and a pair of stakes to tie out the overhang. But this little portico can be elevated with a longer stick and is going to provide you even more protection from the elements. Next up is the classic A-frame, probably the second easiest shelter to establish. You can either use some trekking poles or a ridgeline for this one, along with 4 stakes. Situation dependent, you can run your tarp over the top of the ridgeline or underneath to reduce friction from the cordage onto your tarp. Now the Plow Point only requires a single connection to a tree and offers a ton of room inside by virtue of its diamond shape. It also offers great protection from the wind, and like the lean-to, it does have some dead space. However, with a simple modification, you can create a small ground tarp inside to keep your gear nice and dry. But you could also harvest a pair of long poles to set this up. Simply lash them together and then use another as a ridge beam as a variation. When you set this up, it helps give you something that's more enduring to the elements and can be set up in any number of locations. What if you don't have any of these things and all you have is a walking stick? Well, you can set up the Plow Point as well. You can set up the Plow Point anywhere from open fields to dense forest. The tarp tent is a fantastic choice in inclement weather due to its multiple staked out points and diversity in angles, making it a great option in high winds. You're going to lose a little bit of space inside because of the pole. However, there is plenty of room for you and your kit. Now, this one takes a little bit longer to set up, but it is well worth the wait. We need to harvest a small pole for the center of our tarp. We want to make sure we delimit and then chamfer the edge to make sure that it doesn't damage our tarp in any way. Getting our tarp spread out, the first thing that we need to do is go ahead and stake out the back of the tarp. We're going to do this by staking in from the first pull out from the corner. After we have both of those done, then we can tuck in that corner, which is going to give you a little bit of dry space inside the shelter. After we have the back of the shelter staked down, we can start working on staking in the front of the tarp. And now we're ready to insert that pole to elevate our shelter. Now we're ready to go ahead and elevate our shelter using that pole. And in this case, I'm going to use a small piece of moss on top of that pole in order to further protect my shelter from that pole. After we have that pole placed inside, now we can go ahead and stake out the remainder of the tarp. And as you can see, there is just a ton of room inside this shelter. Now, the bushcrafter's favorite is probably the Adirondack. It features fantastic protection from the wind and the rain and only needs a ridgeline and a couple stakes. But it's a great choice in combination with a fire for cooking or to stay warm. This one also takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of time to get set up, but once you've done it once or twice, man, it's easy peasy to throw up. In this case, I'm going to use the second pull out from the end to give a little bit more of an overhang. And here on the ridge line, I have a small piece of bank line and using a prusik in order to help draw some tension in order to make this nice and tight. Then we can go ahead and start staking out the back of the shelter. And then once we have that done, we can stake out the sides of the shelter. One of the reasons why this is so great is because it offers 3 degrees of protection on the back and both sides, as well as going to give you a little bit of an overhang or portico out of the front as well. Last up, it's the stoked shelter. Now, I'm sure this has an actual name, but this is by far one of the best shelters that you can create with a tarp for wet and windy conditions, as it provides a large and spacious ground tarp, and like the Adirondack, can be used great in conjunction with an open fire for cooking, or it can even be closed up to keep you secure from the harshest of conditions. And this one is probably the most complicated of all the tarp shelters in this particular series, and it will take you a little bit of time to get this thing set up the first time, but moving forward it becomes almost second nature as far as how tall your poles need to be and the other considerations and variables that you need when you're getting this thing put together. And there's always time to throw a stick for rigs. But man, there is plenty of room inside this shelter. And again, if you remove one of those poles, you can draw out and stake down the corner for even more protection from the elements. All right, team, there you go, man. Shelters that you've seen me use all the time, and a quick how-to on getting them set up, as well as the 2 different distinct ridge lines that I use in my kit bag. Let me know what you think down in the comments about the tarp setups that you saw, and which one is your favorite. And that way we can continue to keep this conversation rolling. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.